Right. This is cosy. I like it. I am here with my lovely friend Emma Miller-McCaffrey. That's a mouthful to say.
It is, but it's a lovely mouthful.
It's a...
It was both our maiden names, so I used to be Miller and Anne was McCaffrey, and now we are together.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's cute. Anyone who's anybody knows who Emma is because she's involved in pretty much everything regarding the LGBT community. Michael Corder Foundation.
Yeah,
Liverpool Pride.
Been heavily involved last 2 years.
Recently, Little Mermaids.
Little Mermaids? It's Mermaids.
Just Mermaids.
As much as I love Ariel, it's Mermaids.
You know what? As I'm saying, I think that's wrong. DRM.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of more, but that's a lot in itself. Why do you do all this?
Why do I do it?
Why do you do all this?
Because I am passionate. I started off as a teenager, questioning my sexual orientation, came out, then went to uni and weirdly went back in the closet and kind of lived this whole...
I'm a street girl
and actually lived that way for 5 years before hitting a point of like, no, I can't do this anymore. I need to be real to myself and real to everybody else. I promised myself that I would never lie about who I was to anybody ever again. James Wharton, who at the time was Lance Corporal James Wharton, and he was doing a lot of ambassadorial work with Stonewall.
Ambassadorial.
Yeah. He came along and he talked about being openly gay in the armed forces.
Right.
And as he came out, I kind of rounded off the assembly and said, you know what?
So am I.
Too.
So am I.
So that the kids knew they had someone that they could come and talk to if they were also questioning their sexuality, because I think there's a severe lack of openly gay teachers for young people to talk to in terms of role models. Really loved what they did in the classroom, that when we finished, I was lucky enough to actually have the CEO, Saran, as part of the team that delivered the workshops on that day, and I kind of said to you know, if there's anything I can do to help support DRM up north, let me know.
I'm there.
For a period of time I was driving from North Yorkshire across to Liverpool, to schools in Liverpool.
How long's that drive?
2.5 hours.
Oh jeez.
But it was well worth it, and so I was part of the first group of role models who were trained in the Northwest. Wow. To start up Liverpool's DRM hub. Don't
get me wrong, I'm not going to be ignorant in that fact, but you have a lot of involvement when it comes to trans issues, which there's some people outside who think, you're not trans, why do you care?
We are known as the LGBT and T community. Some people would prefer there's a separation. For me, I'm quite happy that we are all together in the same little box. At the end of the day, we are all a minority in our own little box that we've been put into by the rest of society. And I think we need to be there for each other and stick up for each other and help and support each other. My trans friends, just because they're trans doesn't make them any different to my friends who are cis and were born in the gender that they are in at the minute. And so, you know, for me, whether you're trans or not, it makes no difference. So I'm quite passionate in making sure that trans people's voices are heard just as much as anybody else's. So I am going to be going into 35 schools across the country, from Northumberland to Manchester, even to the Isle of Wight.
Wow.
Focusing on gender identity, that if a young person happens to come out and says, you know, they want to transition in school socially and they want to wear the opposite gender uniform or whatever, just to make it easier for that school to know that that's okay for that people and what they can best do to support that young person.
It's interesting because there has been a lot, I mean a lot of focus on trans issues, and not so much just trans issues, trans children.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of that lately, and some of it's been quite negative, some quite positive. So what you're doing is great for that. It's like right the right time in a way.
Just kind of breaking down some of those stereotypes and some of those fears and concerns that are around, and just giving that education and educating those adults that it's okay for these young people to be questioning, or not even questioning, but to know that their gender identity doesn't align with that they've been designated and been growing up with since birth.
And that's literally all it is, in a sense, as we who know trans kids. It's just exploration.
Absolutely.
Just let them be kids, essentially. That's all it really is. I mean, right now, they may be biologically male, but like, no, I want to walk around in a dress. Fine. A couple of years' time, they might not want to do that anymore.
We know some very supportive parents in Liverpool. That is exactly what they do. They just allow their children to express themselves how they want to express themselves and support them. And there does seem to be this obsession with medical transition, and actually not everyone who is trans wants or needs any kind of medical intervention. It's purely about them being able to feel right in their own bodies that's best fit for them. End of.
Society.
Stop judging people.
That's all it is. It's just these societal norms that everyone just... Yeah, don't get me started. We'll be here for another 3 hours if we get started. You can see the passion when you talk about it. Because when someone can just go on and on and on,
Yeah.
you clearly have an interest in it.
I have more of an understanding and more of an empathy to other people who feel that they are different or don't fit into those society norms. And I just can't get my head around why anybody would just not accept somebody that they came across in society. And obviously our community has many, many different labels that we self-identify with, as well as the other people put upon us. And I kind of say to them, all I'm doing is accepting you and taking you for the person that you are presenting to me right now.
Oh,
and you can see with some of them the penny starts to drop.
Yes, I like that, because again, that's a society norms.
Yeah.
They're all societal functions and devices, just, yeah, controlling.
So it's like, you know, accept the person you have in front of you. So if you are turning up one day to a call out and the person in front of you is presenting as a female, then you accept that person as female. If you turn up to the door, the same door, and the next day that person is presenting as a male, then you accept that person as the male.
No
I don't see why it's so complicated for some people to get their heads around. Because I guess for me it's just easy.
When you hear some rhetoric of people who just don't seem to understand, and the automatic response is something negative and derogatory to something they don't understand.
So I used to work for Broken Rainbow, who were the national LGBT domestic abuse charity. Greater Manchester Police decided that they would change how they record same-sex domestic abuse cases,
Right,
which in itself is a first. Nowhere else in the entire country records same-sex domestic abuse in the way that Greater Manchester Police have started to do so.
So you're dealing with history, girl.
I am. It's so exciting.
Some people might think, why is that such a big deal?
I mean, and even in the training, officers will come up to me in the end and say, I understand what you're talking about, but actually you're telling me to accept people as everyone the same, but then you're wanting me to separate.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is I'm delivering baseline LGBT awareness training. So let's try and get our heads a little bit around the LGBT community, but then looking at domestic abuse and thinking, well, why could there be a barrier to the community coming forward and disclosing this abuse happening in our relationships? Us in the LGBT community don't talk about domestic abuse and domestic violence in our relationships. Partly because I think we fought so hard to get the recognition, to get the civil partnership, to get the equal marriage, that we don't like to admit when something's going wrong in those relationships.
That's an interesting view.
But also because society, again, doesn't reflect that domestic abuse happens in our relationships. There's this very much, I think, our old view that domestic abuse and domestic violence is by a poor little woman who's being hurt and attacked by her aggressive male husband. And actually, in reality, what I'm trying to do is to break that down and say, actually, no, domestic abuse doesn't matter what kind of relationship you're in. Doesn't matter whether you are. Doesn't matter whether you are in a male-male relationship, female-female, male and female, and whether it's the victim is the female or the male in that heterosexual relationship. My training encompasses all of that sort of stuff. And if they come across same-sex domestic abuse, they now use a particular type of code that says, yeah, this was same-sex domestic abuse, and it's closed with that code, which is known as the D66.
Interesting. So we can then collate and
so it's the only force in the entire country who, if I got in touch with them now, they could tell me almost immediately how many same-sex domestic abuses have been reported to them in a time frame.
Wow, that's impressive.
And then break it down into more. They piloted it in Central Park to start with, which is kind of Canal Street and the central Manchester area. Okay. And between June the 6th to December the 6th of 2016, they had 100 domestic abuse cases that were same-sex domestic abuse.
In a small area.
Yeah.
Which is insane, because straight away you don't think that's the thing. Again, it's like people don't think of female being the aggressor to a male. It's exactly the same thing.
Absolutely. By the end of March, I will have trained every single frontline police officer for Greater Manchester Police.
On your own?
On my own.
Wow.
So,
okay, that's impressive.
All of the divisions, so not only Central Manchester, but Salford, Rochdale, Bury, Wigan, Stockport, kind of you name any area that falls under Greater Manchester Police, I will have trained their frontline officers.
Okay, that's something to be proud of, girl.
My mission is to get on that red sofa on BBC One in the morning, and
so if anyone sees this,
absolutely. I want GMP as a force to really be highlighted for this positive work that they have done. Because like I say, they are the only force in the country who's doing this right now. Other forces are potentially keeping an eye on GMP and seeing how this goes and might follow suit, and I really hope that they do.
Well, again, with passion, which is on her face, this will bleed and will happen if you have anything to say about it.
I really hope so.
But if people want to keep an eye on what you're up to, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter.
Twitter?
Yeah, because of the joys of Twitter, my handle is still @Emma but I have changed my name to Emma Miller-McCaffrey.
So yeah,
right
if people search you,
yeah,
so @Emma Baldry,
yeah,
because literally she's doing everything. And if you are interested in those, like literally those type of things, the groups, whatever, you can find all my social media at JohnBirdMedia. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
It's been a long time coming, and it's nice to talk about serious issues.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Say bye.
Bye.
JohnBirdMedia.